In my 60 years of gardening and my 50th year as a landscape professional, I've seen many people make big mistakes in their landscaping, usually with far-reaching consequences. Today I want to share with you what most people, even professionals, don't know about landscaping. And at the end, I'll reveal an argument that I have to this day with other landscape professionals and why that might be a big mistake for your garden. Starting with the very essence of your design, there is a tendency to press and try to be creative. And if you're trying to be too creative and not practical, you might err on the side of coming up with all kinds of fancy, squiggly little lines and thinking that's how to make it look fancy and interesting. Quite the contrary. The idea of setting up your circulation, so your walkways, your pathways, based on use. I'm really fond of that idea, that instead of racking your brain trying to be creative, let's rack our brains trying to be practical and functional. And within that, if we stick to bold lines, it can look extremely professional and be very useful at the same time. So this idea I heard many years ago was addressing a college campus where when they made additions, instead of putting in the circulation right away, they allowed the students to establish the circulation where they could see the patterns that were being used, because these were the best, fastest ways to get where people needed to get, and then build the circulation around that using either straight lines or broad spreading curvilinear lines. You might have a personal preference for curvilinear versus straight lines, and that's a valid preference. That could be how you decide whether you want curvilinear or straight lines, just based on what you like the look of. But whichever you choose, let's be direct, let's be bold, let's be simple about it. There's nothing wrong with straight lines, very practical. A lot of times straight lines tend to have to be more balanced, symmetrical, not necessarily, but many times that's the case. So if you choose curvilinear lines, still focus on the simplicity. So I wouldn't necessarily take people to the outer reaches of your garden unless you have an area back there you want people to be in. And then it can be appropriate that you drop off part of the circulation, drops off people there. The other thing to keep in mind is as you come up with these curvilinear lines, maybe the apex of the curve is a viewpoint from your house or a viewpoint from somewhere that you want the eye directed. Next up, you've probably been told you should use compost to make your plants green and healthy. But what most people get wrong is compost isn't fertilizer. Let me explain how and why you can have the benefits of both. You expect when you use compost that everything turns green and healthy in a week or two. Well, that's not the case, because compost is really fertilizer for soil. And most fertilizers that you buy at garden centers and nurseries are specifically fertilizers for plants that don't benefit the soil. And building the soil through compost has widespread and far-reaching benefits that not only eventually will feed plants and allow your soil to create its own macro and micronutrients so you don't need to apply anything, but also give them everything they need in a fortifying way that allows soil to prevent almost every pest and disease there is. When you're using compost, you're starting a long-term program, and sometimes that long-term program doesn't result in the soil immediately producing the macronutrients you need, for instance, to keep your lawn greener than the Joneses down the street. It might be a year or two before you notice a difference in the vitality and color of your lawn after beginning to use compost or compost tea. So what you might want to do is products such as ours and things like earthworm castings and compost tea and compost that not only build the soil and do it on a long-term basis, but they also can feed the plants at the same time. And in doing this, you've got the best of both worlds that act as fertilizer for the soil and fertilizer for the plants simultaneously. As you think of improving your landscape in your garden, most of us want one or more trees, either for shade, aesthetics, or even fruit. And once you find the tree that you want at your local nursery, you probably end up with something that looks like this. And if you keep it that way, you'll probably end up with something that hurts your tree in the long run. So you get your tree from the nursery with this stake usually tied directly to it, and that really isn't good for the tree. The nurseries need to do it because they don't want to sell crooked trees, and straight trees are desirable and preferred in most cases. But do you know why that's not good for the tree? Well, Chip Valentino, my vice president in charge of proper staking, is a big student of this issue. And what happens if you were to leave that stake on the tree, it's tied directly to the trunk, it inhibits the movement of the tree. And it's that very movement that allows trees to develop the kind of tensile strength starting at the bottom right around the soil that will allow them to stand on their own over time. Tensile strength is when the trunk is wider at its base than it is 1, 2, and 3, and 4 feet high. And that really is our goal. We don't want trees that are permanently staked. We want trees that after a year or two, all stakes can be removed. So this is how you stake it to have movement when the wind blows. We have 2 stakes, and then we have 2 flexible ties. Professional staking is when the stakes end up being exactly the same height, and the ties, in my opinion, should be just about 6 inches below the top of the stakes. And the way you determine where you should tie is you grab it with your hand, and wherever you can hold it and have it stand up straight, you go 6 inches above that, and that's where you put the ties. Then if you want, if the trunk has a little curve in it or something, you can straighten it with more flexible ties down lower. There is some controversy, even among professionals, is how you should orient the stakes. I really believe firmly you should orient the stakes so that the prevailing wind direction is perpendicular to the stakes. So not where the wind blows into one of the stakes, but stakes on either side of the tree, and then the wind comes, because that way you can get the most movement, and that's what you want. This is a big issue with chip. And if you want to learn about this issue and many other important issues that bug chip, you need to subscribe to our channel. Lastly, this bonus point is something Chip and I have had heated debates with landscape professionals for years. And if we wanted to really get deep into it, maybe we'll make a full video about it. So let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do that. One of the most impactful and important elements you design in your landscape and your garden is the irrigation system. And many do it inefficiently and without an understanding of hydraulics. Let me explain. To really know how to design an irrigation system is to understand pressure. Pressure is key. Pressure is more valuable than diamonds. You'll see municipalities and even people going to great expenses to put in booster pumps, which are expensive and in many cases a waste of money. I'd rather do it without booster pumps, but understand hydraulics. I've had the opportunity to interview people for jobs, and my key question is, what would give you the most pressure if you ended a pipe that you're going to put a sprinkler on with a 2-inch pipe or with a 1/2-inch pipe? And almost all professionals, if they don't really understand irrigation design, they say, oh, we want to make it smaller at the end to increase the pressure. So we'll go down to a 1/2-inch or a 3/4 pipe. We get more pressure. That is 100% wrong. You do increase velocity, but you decrease pressure. And the only reason you use smaller pipe is not to increase pressure, it's to save money, because the smaller pipe is a lot less expensive than a big pipe. So what irrigation designers that know what they're doing, what they do is they calculate what's the smallest pipe I can put throughout the system that will carry the amount of water that needs to be carried, that will have minimal pressure loss due to friction. That's what you're calculating, is pressure loss due to friction. So how does that apply to you in your garden and landscape? We have a rule. We never use 1/2-inch pipe because there's not a big difference in cost between 1/2-inch and 3/4. And we're safer by just ending everything in 3/4 pipe. And then we know we've got plenty big pipe for most sprinklers. And when you're talking to someone you're considering hiring, you might ask them, how do you maximize pressure at the end of every line? Because you know that pressure is key to your sprinklers working properly. If they say, I maximize pressure by notching down the size of the pipe, then they don't really understand pipe sizing and they don't really understand irrigation hydraulics. You'd be better hiring somebody that understands that the pipe size, the bigger pipe sizes, provide you more pressure. If you want to hear more tips of mine garnered from 60 years of experience in gardening and landscaping, check out this video.